well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on how to unleash your team's efficiency with AvidXchange's AP solution software. Software solutions. I'm Sarah Novak, Marketing Manager at LBMC Technology Solutions. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. All the phone lines have been muted just to eliminate any background noise. If you experience any technical difficulties, please let us know using the chat panel. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar today, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. You can submit your question via the questions panel in WebEx. And we'll also be recording this session, and I'll be sending that out in a few days' time. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to John Parisi. He is AvidXchange's Alliance Manager and has been with Avid for over 2 years, but has been also working in the AP space for over a decade and within the ERP space for around 15 years. So with that, I will turn it over to John.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. What you see on the screen, this is a picture of myself pre-COVID. So obviously, the hair is a little bit longer today and probably like everyone else on the phone. So looking forward to actually visiting the barber, hopefully sometime later this week. So with that, let's jump right into it. As far as the quick agenda today, what we're going to cover is just really the business continuity, the way we see it today, and some of the AP challenges. We're going to spend majority of time around that topic. And then we're going to look into how AP automation, what that looks like here at AvidXchange and how we are addressing some of the concerns in the marketplace around AP. Then we want to introduce you to a special offer, and I've been around for a while, and this is a very exciting offer that AvidXchange is now extending, and we actually are extending the offer just to those that have participated in it and will be in attendance for this webinar today. So please stick around until the very end. We got some very good, exciting news. And then, like Sarah stated, we're going to open this up for Q&A at the end. So real quick, right when all of this started, about 6 weeks ago, here at AvidXchange, we polled about 500 senior management managers at companies across the U.S. These companies were really in the SMB space, and the way we define SMB are companies probably between $5 million up to about $500 million in revenue. So really within that space where we play in here at Avid is that SMB space. So we polled about 500 managers, and we found some of them had some really critical gaps in their continuity plans when this pandemic happened. What we saw was nearly about 34% of the companies surveyed either had no business plan, continuity plan in place, or a plan that wasn't considered comprehensive enough in the face of, really a non-precedented, natural disaster or an emergency such as we've been going through for about the last 2 months. And then about a third of them had a business continuity plan that accounted for emergencies across multiple geographic locations or areas at the same time. So they really didn't have they may have had a plan in place for one location, but not a plan that looked at multiple locations at the same time. I think what we really found interesting was this very next piece of information was about 78% of the companies, they didn't have a plan that was able to sustain their business for more than 2 months. So just think about it. About a little over 22% of them had a plan in place that could extend beyond the 2 months. But you think about it, about 80% of them are now working on plans now that we're going into the 3rd month. And if they haven't worked on something now, they're actually struggling even more. So it's really not only the business continuity that we saw as far as through this study, we also found that there was this technology gap found across these companies as well. only about 37% of the businesses really had the right technology in place to allow their entire workforce to work at home. For example, even here at AvidXchange, when all of this happened, we're a company of about 1,400 employees. Probably 75 to 80% of them work at our corporate office in Charlotte. And we weren't even prepared to have everyone work at home. It took us probably close to 4 or 5 days to get all the appropriate technology needed for our employees to allow them to work at home, such as laptops, the right software, dialing to the network. And it took us about that almost a week to get everyone that was currently working in our offices. And we have 6 offices across the U.S. So not only our corporate office, but also our satellite offices across the U.S., because we moved everyone to a work-at-home environment. And it did take some time. We had a business continuity in place, but we didn't have this technology in place as far as a plan around that. And we also found that, in fact, about 19% said their employees didn't have the right technology across to be able to access it from their home environment. And then about 85% of them said the automation technology would be significantly helpful in preparing for future business continuity needs. So what I really want to just stress is just not having your business continuity plan needs to address this technology gap that many, many companies have faced and will face in future times, where if this happens again, say in the fall or in sometime next year, something you do need to plan for. What we saw with this survey is there's really this bill pay challenge. About 29% of the companies that we polled said they wouldn't be able to make all of their payments if employees couldn't go into the office. And about 12% said they wouldn't be able to make any payments in a work environment if everyone was working at home. I have been speaking with a lot of different customers, and there's this one particular customer, and I bring this out just as an example. They are producing and produce about 700 to 800 checks per week. And what they are forced to do, because everyone is working at home, what they require inside their organization is to get multiple signatures on every invoice that comes in, but they also require multiple signatures on the checks that they produce. So just think what this company now is running into, and what they have to do is they actually literally have one employee driving around the city of Houston, obtaining those signatures on each invoice, and then driving around again when those checks are getting cut, obtaining those multiple signatures. You can just see the inefficiencies and the concerns this company has just having this employee driving around the city with signed checks in their car, and the probability of issues around that as well. We also found that about 54% who said that working from home would have a significant impact or an extremely high impact on their finances team with their ability to process invoices. Again, it goes back to, if you think about most companies, how they process their invoices. You know, they're receiving them in-house. Unless they're able to contact their suppliers and send them to, say, a Dropbox or someone that's off-site, someone has to now go back into that office and secure all of those invoices. We also found about 40% of them said at least some payments would be late if their finance team had to work from home, and 12% said all of their payments would be late. So just imagine your organization, if all your payments would be late, you're going to incur additional fees, late fees, and you're probably missing out on any type of early payment discounts. Nearly 20% of them said their business would only be able to operate normally for about 2 to 3 weeks if cash flow was interrupted because of the late payments. You know, this really highlights why AP automation can be critical to helping maintain bill pay operations during a crisis that we're currently going through. So some of the challenges that we are seeing from our customers that are our current customers, but also customers that we are speaking with. First off, it's, paper checks in general. They're still a norm within the marketplace. About 70% of all B2B volume, as far as payment volume in the U.S., are still paid by paper check. And if you look at companies that are less than 25 million in revenue, about 80% of their payments are still processed by checks. So again, they run into an issue. How are you going to process checks when all your print stock and your printer that you use to print those checks are sitting in a vacant office? While cost eliminates for processing a traditional check varies, it ranges between $3 to $7 per check, which includes both the supplies such as postage and envelopes, but it also includes labor costs. And this is a good rule of thumb if you're looking at as far as to determine what it does cost your organization to process a check. This doesn't include the costs associated with processing an invoice. A check is between $3 to $7. If you look at the total cost of processing an invoice by the time it hits your front doors until it actually leaves your facilities via some type of payment, it's right around $20 by the time you include all of the soft and hard costs associated with it. B2B admin costs associated with, processing checks in general, it's about almost $3 trillion in the U.S. In addition, companies still rely on paper checks, but checks are increasingly very prone to fraud. And it's probably the very first area where a company will experience fraud inside their organization. It is around checks because they're so accessible inside of many organizations. You'll walk into a lot of companies and you'll go next to the printer and you'll see a box of print stock just sitting on the floor, and it's very easy for someone just to take a few checks from the bottom, and the next thing you know, the company is having a number of checks being processed that are fraudulent. According to an article actually by the Wall Street Journal, attempted check fraud actually increased to about $15 billion in 2018, and that was up from about $8.5 billion just in 2016. So successful check fraud made up about 47 or about $1.3 billion of banks fraud losses. That's a rise from about just under $800 million in 2016. So if you look at it as far as just think about it, one thing hopefully we will learn and move from because of this crisis, there is some positive, is the awareness that there is a better way to pay our suppliers than just the old paper check that we all became accustomed to. So real quick, here's some benefits of AP automation for your business continuity. And here's probably the top 6 that we are seeing here at AvidXchange, why it can really bolster your continuity plans. First is the AP automation. It provides a central hub for all your payment-related files. Activating your business continuity plan likely means that you can't be in the office sitting and sifting through your file cabinets. You'll want to be able to quickly access any payment-related file with really just a click of a button. AP automation should provide a cloud-based, really a central repository, so you don't have to rely on those file cabinets any longer. You could be working at home, but you still have access to all of that information. And because it's in the cloud, anyone could access it from anywhere. You no longer have to be in that office. Second one we're seeing is around the whole manual process, whole idea, anytime, anywhere access. The whole manual process, reviewing and approving invoices, it typically can take days and include many different approvers when it's a manual process compared to an automated system. Waiting on approvals slow down the payment process, which could lead to late fees, or it could result in missed discounts and lost revenue for your company. And the level of difficulty multiplies if you're not in the office. With AP automation, you don't have to be in a specific place to approve invoices and make those payments. All you need is an internet access, and you could view and approve over your phone or any other type of device that you access from your home currently. Third is, if you look at it, is really how to create customized and automated workflows. AP automation, it does allow you to create customized workflows with both rules and restrictions. And that's a real key, because you do want to have a workflow that really mimics your current workflow that you have in a manual process. You know, these eliminate the hassle of constantly reaching out to different individuals for approvals every month, and provide you with the control and visibility over the entire process. And in case if someone is out of the office or they can't return back to work, your AP team can reroute those approvals so your business continues as usual. And as an added benefit that I'd like to add is, all your historical actions and comments should be recorded as well. So if a new approver comes on board, they can step right in without missing a beat or a particular detail. The fourth one is, if you look at a manual process, the AP department should spend a greater portion of their time not pulling piles of paper out of file cabinets to get an overall picture of the company's finances. Fortunately, AP automation does simplify this process by providing a comprehensive search and reporting tools. It does make it quicker and easier to gain data to make more strategic business decisions when you're under pressure and you don't have access to your usual resources when you are in your office compared to working at home. The fifth one is around the electronic payments and how you provide easier payments to your suppliers or your customers compared to a paper check. If you're still leveraging, paper checks as a payment form, you may run into trouble, like I stated earlier, around time. However, with solutions that provide e-payment options, you can continue paying your suppliers even in times when, person-to-person delivery or a physical check just aren't feasible. For example, like go back to that company that's out in Houston. They are still trying to process paper checks, but it is very time consuming for them. And the last point I'd like to just point out as far as one of these benefits, as far as business continuity around AP automation, is around having this service team, how a service team can help improve your supplier relationships. The best automated solutions, what they should have is they should combine a dedicated service team along with software to take on the manual tasks of keeping up with your suppliers' payment preferences. Do they want to receive payment by check? Would they now prefer to receive those payments quicker? A lot of the companies have experienced some type of cash flow, so they may prefer to receive their payments quicker than receiving it by the old standard paper check. In today's environment, this becomes especially appealing to many, many companies. You'll have a trusted AP ally who will continue to maintain the contact with your suppliers to see how and if all of their checks have been received, the payments been received on their end. So when you look at AP automation and different companies, one question you should always ask them is, how are you working with my suppliers, and what does that relationship look like? Will that still be a responsibility of myself, or can I offload that responsibility to you, being the software vendor, can you look after my suppliers? Should I have to worry about if my supplier changes bank accounts? Should I worry about how a supplier receives payment? Your software AP automation solution should take that on for you. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I'll get into some of those benefits in a few seconds. So let's take a look at AP automation as far as through the eyes of AvidXchange. So before I go into the actual solution itself, just want to give you a quick overview for those who may not be familiar with AvidXchange, who we are and who we are a fit for. We've been around for about 20 years. So we are currently about 1,400 employees strong. If you look at just our volume, just last year alone, we processed close to 12 million payments, and those 12 million payments were the result of close to 24 million invoices that came through our system. And this next status where we are really different with inside the marketplace. We have close to 600,000 active suppliers. When we say suppliers, those are your customers, people that you are procuring services from. So when you come on as a customer of AvidXchange, or when we bring on a new customer, what we found historically is between 35 to 40% of their suppliers, we already have working relationships with them. What that means, and the benefit of that to you, is we know exactly how they want to get paid, when they want to get paid. So if you're currently paying by check, well, we may discover that they're already receiving electronic payments from 10 or a dozen different companies. So we could easily convert them for you to an electronic payment, so you no longer have to issue in checks. And there's benefits when we move a customer from a paper check to an electronic payment. We're adding literally close to about 1,000 suppliers per week to this network. Again, that is really our strength. We have close to about 400 individuals, and their sole responsibility is to help manage those suppliers. They're the ones who will reach out to them, get them enrolled into the program. They will be in contact with them as far as letting them know when payments have been sent. They will act as a first line as far as if one of your clients has a question around their payment. Say they still want to receive paper checks. We send them a paper check, and for some reason they don't receive it, or we notice after 30 days they haven't cashed that check, our team will reach out to your supplier and inquire why they have not cashed that check. If they didn't receive it, we'll issue them a second check. The whole idea behind the supplier network team is we're going to hopefully offload all those type of tasks that your AP department typically will have to do that really adds no additional value to your company. Offload those to us, and we'll take care of it for you. We also here at AvidXchange, we integrate with about 150 different accounting systems, all the accounting systems that you would expect that are really relevant in the mid-market space, from, say, QuickBooks on the lower end, and then as you move into the mid-market for all the Sage products, Sage Intacct, Microsoft Dynamics, GP. So all the mid-market, all the core horizontals, I will say ERPs we support, but then we also support about 100 or so more vertically integrated solutions around, say, real estate, property management. So there shouldn't be an accounting system that you may be on that we don't have a customer using it on, or that we haven't had an experience doing an implementation with our close to about 5,500 customers. So that's just a quick overview as far as the company. Let me talk a little bit about the two different solutions. At AvidXchange, we have an invoice processing solution, but we also have a payment processing solution. It works great if these two work together, which they do if a customer comes on board. It works fantastic if they start with our invoice and we also do their payments. But that doesn't mean you couldn't just come on and use just our invoice, or you come on with just using our payments. You can come on either way. You can start first with Invoice, or you can come on first with payments and add either solution to however you like. So let's talk a little about the AvidXchange Avid Invoice and what that looks like. So before I go into that, let me just walk you through what the typical workflow for an invoice is for most companies in the mid-market space. These are all the tasks that your organization typically will have to deal with invoice. You know, the invoice is going to be generated by your customers. It's going to be received in-house by you. Someone, say an AP clerk, is going to have to open up the mail. Eventually, it has to get routed maybe to a particular AP clerk based on that vendor. Then someone has to code it. Eventually, it will have to go through an approval process. That invoice may sit on someone's desk for a while. And then you have the manual data entry into the accounting system. And then at that point, once it gets entered into the accounting system, you're going to have to pay those suppliers. You're going to have to cut a manual check. Once you print that check, someone has to send it around to get signatures for it. Then once it gets cashed, if it gets cashed, there's the bank reconciliation. Then there's all the follow-up with the vendor. In this case, if a check never was cashed, or it could be as far as speaking with your bank, follow up with the vendors. So there's a lot of manual tasks when you have a AP system that is manual in nature. Now, contrast that to when you move from a manual to an automated AP solution. What's going to happen is all those tasks that are manual in nature, you're going to offload onto a company such as AvidXchange. What you're left with are really three key areas. And these three key areas are the areas you should never give up control on. So no matter what a system you're looking at, always you do want to do your due diligence to make sure you don't lose control in these three critical areas. The first one is coding an invoice to a particular GL account. Your team should always have that control. The system should give you tools that allow you they'll make it faster, but you should always have that control, and you will should never lose that control. Second area you should never lose control on is the approval process of the invoice, but also the approval process of cutting those checks as well, and also selecting which payments you want to make when and how. So again, moving from a manual system, you'll have all these manual tasks that you have to deal with, compared to after automation is keeping control of those critical areas, but offloading all those manual tasks to a third party. So here at AvidXchange, here's the workflow as far as an invoice, how it comes into the system. You could bring it into our system three ways. Here at AvidXchange, we're a SaaS solution. So because we're a SaaS solution, we will reach out to your vendors when you come on board and let them know we're working with you as their vendor, and instead of them sending invoices directly to you, they will now send them directly to AvidXchange for us to start processing them for you. Your suppliers or your customers, they can send them in to us multiple ways. We'll set up a PO box under your name in which your clients can send those invoices to. They could also email them to us electronically if they like as well. Third way, if you receive invoices, say on an ad hoc case, one of your clients may drop off an invoice, you could easily scan that invoice locally and upload it into the system. This way, once you upload it, it could be part of the entire workflow. Once that invoice comes in, what we're going to do here at AvidXchange, we're going to index that invoice. We're going to pull off all the header information. From there, it's going to go into an approval workflow. Eventually, it's going to get coded, pushed into the GL account, and then be made available for payment and processing. So let's take a quick look into the solution itself. So what you see here is, think of it, this is your dashboard in which you would log into every morning. the way AvidXchange works is there's no licenses that you have to sign up for. Everyone in your company can have access to the solution. You could determine based on roles what access they will have. You may have an AP clerk that may only have the rights to do the invoice approval, but you may have someone that actually has the rights just to do the payment approval. Or you may have the controller actually that will have visibility across all accounts. Or an AP clerk may only have visibility into the accounts that they work on. So they won't see the accounts that John works on, but they will only have visibility into the accounts that that particular AP clerk is responsible for. Each user, they have very easy access to all the pertinent data from invoice number, supplier IDs, name, the dollar amount for each amount. A manual approval process and paper invoices, they really slow down payables. You know, it consumes loads amount of times of AP's hours and does result in missed discounts from their suppliers. So once you determine or click on any of those particular, let me back up for a second. So what you can do, say you want to view more details on any of these invoices. You may not be familiar with it, or you just want to review it. So you could easily just click on a particular invoice, and what you would see is the actual invoice itself. On the right-hand side is a scanned image of that invoice that came into AvidXchange. So what we're going to do when that invoice comes in, we're going to scan that invoice. It could be single page, multiple pages. If it's multiple pages, you're going to have access to the entire invoice as though it was sitting on your desk. What we're also going to do is pull off all the pertinent header information, such as invoice number, invoice total amount, the invoice dates, the due dates. We're going to pull off the supplier information if there's any projects associated with it, contract numbers, anything in that header section inside on that invoice, we're going to pull off and present it to you as well. People ask, how do you do that? They won't. Some people will ask, do we do it via OCR? And the way we do it at AvidXchange, because what we have discovered over the last 20 years is the information that we eventually will push into your accounting system, it better be 100% accurate. It can't be 99% accurate. It better be 100%. Issue with that is you can't rely on OCR to get you to that 100%. The best OCR engines out there are probably right around 80%. So what you're forced to do is still manually scan each invoice to make sure this header information is correct. How do we get around that? The way we do it here at AvidXchange, and it is different from a lot of companies. A lot of companies do rely on OCR, and they do rely on you to review each invoice for those exceptions. Well, if you're doing that, you're not saving a lot of time. The way we do it is we actually have a team of indexers. When an invoice comes in, we have one person comes in, and they manually will key in all this information into our solution. So the next question, well, I'm sure they can make a mistake. Well, which is correct. So we pass that invoice then off to a second individual. That second individual will then compare what is on the invoice, on the scan invoice, and compare to what was typed into the header information on the left-hand side. This way we can confirm that it will, with confidence, that 100% of this information that gets indexed and presented to you will be 100% accurate, because we do know eventually that will be eventually pushed into your accounting system. So once all this invoice itself is scanned and you review it as far as all that information, the next step would be, how do you allocate a particular cost to a GL account? Just, there's multiple tabs across the bottom of the screen. The very first one is distributions. So this is where you're going to allocate a particular cost to your GL account. During our implementations, we'll import your chart of accounts into AvidXchange. So it'll be a drop-down menu. So your AP team or AP clerks, they don't have to memorize all of the codes. If you update it with inside your accounting system, that update can be pushed back into AvidXchange. So we will always have a current view of your chart of accounts and what they look like, and always have those ability to present those to whomever doing the distributions. When you have a particular line item, you could allocate a line item by a percentage, or you could break it out by, a department, or by a project, either by a percentage or a dollar amount. Next thing I just want to quickly go over is our workflow engine. We have a very robust workflow engine itself. A lot of customers will ask is, do I have to change my current workflow as far as how we're currently approving invoices? And the answer to that is no. What we will do is we'll sit with you during our implementation and map out your current workflows, determine how an invoice flows through your organization, and we will mimic that within inside of our system. If you have thresholds as far as dollar amounts, we could build those into our tool. For example, in this example, you'll see on the bottom, we have a threshold rule where it states if an invoice is greater than $5,000, it needs to go eventually to the controller. If an invoice is less than $5,000, it will bypass that controller for the approval process itself. So if you have, as far as approvers that need, multiple layers, we could work that into the system. Or if a invoice needs to be sent over to one individual, because, for example, say they just handle all the invoices for Home Depot, and you have another AP clerk that handles all the invoices from Lowe's. When we recognize an invoice that comes from Lowe's, we will automatically send it to that AP clerk that handles Lowe's. When an invoice comes in from Home Depot, those invoices will go directly to that individual that handles Home Depot. We have some smart tools as far as in our distribution as well. So we'll remember if an invoice comes in from, say, Home Depot, and the last way you coded it, we'll remember those. So the next time an invoice comes in, we'll pre-populate that information for you to make it faster. But also know you could always change that if you like. One thing that's very nice as far as with the tool is there's a historical or a history tab. So what this gives you is a snapshot of any activity that has taken place on an invoice. It's going to be recorded. So from the time that invoice comes into the system, if someone were to change a particular dollar amount, a particular value, it would tell you who's engaged with that invoice. You'll have a complete history. What's really nice with this is if you were to go through an audit, you can give your auditor a read-only access to your instance of AvidXchange. And instead of them having to go through and ask, can I see invoice X, 1, 2, 3, then someone has to go out and find that. That auditor will have all that information for them, presented to them right here on the screen. They can see exactly how long it took someone to approve an invoice and who actually touched it. Let me step back a little bit as far as on the workflow. One thing that's really nice with the workflow itself, you can put timers on. And what I mean by that is you may have a workflow where you give a particular individual, say, 2 or 3 days to approve an invoice. If they haven't approved it, what will happen then is that inactivity will get recorded onto a report that, say, the AP manager could pull. They can see all the invoices that are in a workflow and who's been sitting on them. So if a particular person is, they just have a tendency to sit on an invoices longer, it may be an indicator for you to do some additional training or lend some help to that particular individual. And that's a really nice feature within inside our workflow engine. So lastly, so we stepped through as far as the invoices coming into the system. They could, again, come in through a PO box. They could be scanned. They could be uploaded. They go through a workflow. You code them to your accounting system. You post it to your accounting system. And now the very last step is you need to pay your suppliers. Here at AvidXchange, again, like I stated earlier, probably our core strength is really what we call this AvidPay network. It's where the 600,000 suppliers sit. Again, we have a team of about 400 folks that manage these suppliers for you. We have about 30,000 of them that are taking some type of electronic payment currently. And let me mention as far as the benefit to you when we're able to convert one of your customers from receiving check to an electronic payment. If we could move them from receiving a paper check, they prefer a paper check and that's how they want to receive, we're fine still issuing a paper check. But if we discover that, this customer is receiving electronic payment from 4 other vendors, there's a good likelihood that they would accept an electronic payment from you. If we can convert a customer to an electronic payment, the benefit to you is the more we can send payments through this electronic network, be it an ACH or a virtual card, there's going to be rebates available to you as a customer. So if you look at the flow of a payment through this payment network, the payment is generated through the accounting system. So typically now if you're printing out paper checks, when you're ready to print, you're clicking through, say, GP or Intact, and you're selecting which payments you want to make payments on. And then at that point, you're going to say, go print. And you're sending what you're basically doing, which not basically, what you are doing is you're sending a print file to your local printer. You got your print stock in your printer, and you're printing all these checks off. When you move to an electronic payment, what we're going to do is we're going to sit where that printer was. Instead of you printing to your local printer, you're going to print basically to AvidXchange. You're going to create this payment file. That's going to tell us when you send it to us electronically, and it's literally just like one click within inside of your AvidXchange solution. So when you click that payment now, what that does is it's going to send to AvidXchange a payment file, and that payment file includes who do you want to pay, how much you want to pay, and we know because we manage that partner, that supplier relationship, we know how they want to receive payment. It will tell us, do they want to receive it by check, do they want to do it by an ACH, or do they want to receive it by a one-time use virtual card. So we actually support 3 types of payments to your suppliers. Again, majority of customers are still requesting by a paper check, which we're happy to facilitate. But again, there's 2 digital payments. It's what we call Avid Pay Direct, APD. What that is an enhanced ACH payment. So what we're going to do is not only send it via an ACH payment, what we're going to send along with that is a rich remittance data. So they're going to know exactly, instead of just a deposit made to their bank account, and a lot of times what they'll see is when you have a standard ACH is a payment will be made, but there's no details with it. That causes is a phone call into you. I've received this payment. Can you tell me what it's for? With this rich remittance data, it's going to tell them exactly all those details that we pull off in the header information. We're going to include that in this remittance data. So whole idea is to stop those phone calls coming into you. And then lastly is we have a virtual card. And what that virtual card is a one-time use MasterCard. So as long as they have a merchant account, which most of your vendors will, we will send them a 14-digit one-time use code. They will enter that, and we'll load that merchant card with the dollar amount and of your payment to them. So all they have to do is code into their merchant terminal the 14-digit code, and then that amount that's on the virtual card will be deposited into their merchant account for them. So that's a quick high-level overview as far as AvidXchange. Some of the issues around business continuity that we're seeing really within the last 8 weeks or so, it kind of surprised us as far as the number of clients that were looking at us that we spoke to over a year, but now because of the issues that, some of the issues I spoke about earlier as far as not being able to process payments, that is a very, very big issue. Not of the two, invoice and pay, of the two that a lot of companies are worried about is how do they continue paying their suppliers, especially utility companies. Your utility bills are coming no matter what, and those have to be paid on time. And you know the consequences if you don't pay those utility bills on time. It used to be they would just turn off your utilities. They're giving you there's a little wiggle room during these times. They may not do that, but you will incur fees if you are late. So a lot of companies are worrying about paying their very well-established suppliers, but also their utility payments. So how are we at AvidXchange looking at this, and how can we help? So we've had a lot of customers inquire about the solution, but what we discovered was a lot of their budgets have either been frozen or they've been cut overall. So we stepped back and said, okay, we know we got to do the right thing. How can we still help them? So what we're doing is we came up with this new offer where if a customer were to sign up with us by the end of June, and we actually extended it for everyone on the call today, if you were to sign up with us by the end of June, we're going to waive all of the implementation fees that would be associated with coming on board, but we're also going to waive all those transaction fees, so you won't experience any type of an expense for the first 12 months. So the way we bill our service, it's all transaction based. So there's a fee of about $1.50 for each invoice that comes through our system, and for each check is about 89 cents. We're going to offset that, and you won't see any of those expenses for the first 12 months. So it's a very great offer. If you look at as far as next question people ask is how quickly can we get this done? On the payment side, we could get you up and running in about 14 days. It's about a 5 to 10 hour commitment on your side. But just think by the end of the month, literally you could be on your way from having a manual system where you're still cutting checks, where you could be issuing electronic payments to all your suppliers. And it's literally about 5 to 10 hours on your time. So with that, hopefully it was informative. You hopefully picked a couple of little nuggets out of the presentation today. We do like to open this up for a poll, what you see on your screen. This is just some of the quotes we've been receiving back from some of the clients that are on AvidXchange, what they've experienced as far as having a system, especially in these last 2 months. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah, and I believe she just posted the poll question online. So real quick, A, B, or C? And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah, and I would like to say thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, John. Yes, I've opened up that poll. If you can please submit your answers in the polling section, that would be great. We'll just keep that open for a couple more minutes.
And I'll say just one last thing. If you have any additional questions, if you actually would like to see a more in-depth demo that would be geared more for your particular company, please reach out to your LBMC client manager, and we could get that scheduled for you.
Yep, and we actually have a couple of questions here. So one question is, how easy is it to get others set up outside of AP? Get others outside of AP to use it, especially the approval process?
Yeah, like I was saying, the approval process on the AP side, we could get that up and running in about 2 weeks. Again, about 5 to 10 hours of their time as far as what we need. Really what we're going to do is just look at their current workflow on the invoice side, but on the AP side, that's very, very simple at that point. All we're trying to do is we're just connecting dots from AP, the accounting system, and into the bank accounts where we would be drawing the funds from.
Okay. And then is there a limit to the number of users that can use the solution?
Nope, there's not. As I indicated earlier, because we're a SaaS solution and the way we charge as far as the solution itself, it's all transaction based. So we're not charging any type of license fees. So you could make available the solution to everyone in your organization. More likely or not, it'll be limited or gated based on a individual's roles, but there's no limit to how many people can access the solution itself.
And then we have someone asking about what is the cost for the product?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So just a quick review. Again, it's all transaction based. There's a implementation fee depending on your accounting system, the structure. It could range between $2,500 to about $7,000. So that's a one-time fee. And then for the transaction fee is for the invoice, for everything from setting up that PO box to the approval process, that's only $1.50. And then for the payment side of us facilitating the payment, that's only 89 cents. Imagine just the cost of, if we're printing checks to a client, just a check and a stamp and the envelope alone, that's going to be about 60 cents. So that is, the ROI on that is almost immediate. But again, we do have that offer going on where we are going to waive all the implementation fees and all the transaction fees for the next 12 months. So again, like more information on that, please reach out to your LBMC client manager, and we give you additional details on that as well.
Okay. Great. So the next question is, the approval process look like? Does the does the approver get an email and click approve, or would they need to log into the software?
Both ways. Each time an invoice comes in, you can set it up where you get an email once a day. You could set it up where you get an email for every invoice, or you can set up on any type of schedule you like. If your company is receiving, hundreds of invoices, you don't want to receive an email for each individual one. You might just do, every day send me an email, but you could always log into your instance of AvidXchange, see all the invoices that have come in and take action on them. But you will get an alert that an invoice has been received and that you need to take some type of action on. But again, you can set as far as how often you want that email to be received by you in the setup of your instance of AvidXchange. And you could always change it during the course of time as well.
Okay.
Glad we got some questions.
We do have some more questions.
Sure.
What is the charge per ACH payment?
Oh, again, ACH it's the same. So we just charge 89 cents no matter what type of payment. It'll be 89 if it's check, ACH, or it's by the virtual card. And again, it's all the ACH or the virtual card where you end up earning your rebates on the back end, which will help offset a portion, and in some instance, it will help offset the entire cost of AvidXchange, or it could even be a cash positive for the AP department. Because it all depends on the volume and the dollar value of those invoices going through the system. Think of it just like the rebate you earn on your personal credit card. Same concept there. We receive rebates back from MasterCard, and we share those back with you.
Okay. There's a question, what if our ERP system is not as commonly used? Can this plug into lesser used systems?
Yep. Again, we support about 150 accounting systems. If by chance there's one that we haven't seen, what we'll do is work with, say, LBMC, work with you. We do have templates available. All we need really to know is how is that ERP system, what do they want to be received, and how do they want it to be received in as far as the payment file, but also all the information that's being generated out of AvidXchange as far as the GL structure. So it's really probably just an Excel file. We just make sure we map our fields correctly to that accounting system. So that's something we would work with our implementation team, along with LBMC and also with you as well.
And the next question is there an automation for us to pay directly from Avid ourselves if we are currently using it?
Yep, you can. So if majority of times our customers are facilitating 100% of their payments through us, because we could facilitate any type of payment. But if they want to make a payment, say they want to cut a check that's a one-off to a particular vendor, they could easily do that inside the system itself, just manually print out a check, and they could just have that recorded in our system that it has been paid. So they can print, still have control, and still print a check locally.
And the next one is, if the vendor want a check as payment, is there a way to add an electronic signature on the check?
That one I would have to check. I believe there is, as far as an electronic signature on it. Sarah, I will get back to you with a confirmation on it, but I believe you will have the ability for the electronic signature on the check itself.
We'll follow up on that one.
Okay. I will send out for you this afternoon.
Okay, is there a way to match POs and invoices in this system?
There is. We have a PO module that we do have part of our system. So as long as you're using our PO system, that PO number, and again, our PO system, that itself will have an approval workflow on itself. So whatever PO number is generated when an invoice comes in, because we're going to pass that PO number to your customer, that should be on their invoice. And then at that point, we'll match that PO number to the PO number on the invoice itself. And then we work with some other third parties. If you need to match that PO number on the back end for three-way matching, we could do that as well, facilitate it.
Great. I don't see any other questions.
Anything else?
These
were good.
I think we've got all the questions covered, but if anybody has any more questions, I'll be sending out a follow-up email with the recording, and you feel free to reply to that email or reach out to your LBMC Technology Solutions client manager, and we'd be glad to get those questions answered for you. So thank you, John, very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Presenting, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email in a couple of days. And thanks, everyone, for attending, and have a great day.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you again.